The lights in the cantina were always dim. Commander Veltar Kozin liked it that way. In the darkness, the other aliens could not see his scars so clearly. They could not count the missing pieces of his shell, or notice how his left antenna had been cut short in battle long ago. Veltar sat at his usual table in the corner of the big room. The table was made of metal and had burn marks from fights that happened years before. He held a glass of blue liquid that tasted like fire going down his throat. It was strong alcohol from his homeworld, and it helped him forget things he did not want to remember. The cantina was on Nexus Prime, a giant space station that floated between the stars. Aliens from many different worlds came here to do business. They bought and sold things that their governments did not want them to trade. Pirates, merchants, soldiers, and spies all drank together in this place. It was neutral ground where old enemies could sit at the same table without fighting. Tonight was different, though. Everyone was talking about the same thing. The humans had joined the galaxy. Veltar listened to the talk around him. At the bar, 3 young Thraxian soldiers were making loud jokes about how weak humans looked. Their red skin was bright with excitement, and their 4 arms waved around as they talked. "Did you see the pictures?" one of them said with a laugh. "They have only 2 arms and 2 legs. How do they even fight?" "And they are so small," said another. "I could break one with just my hands." The third one drank from his cup and wiped his mouth. "My commander says we will teach them their place soon. Show them how real warriors fight." Other aliens in the room nodded and made sounds of agreement. The Velkari traders at the next table clicked their mandibles, which was how they showed they were amused. Even the quiet Zenthari in the back corner seemed to be smiling, though it was hard to tell with their face tentacles. Veltar said nothing. He just drank his blue firewater and watched. The cantina door opened with a soft hiss. 3 beings walked in and the room became a little quieter. These were humans. The first one was tall for his species, with black hair and dark eyes that moved around the room like a hunter looking for prey. His clothes were simple but clean, and he walked like a soldier even though he wore no uniform. This was Captain Do-hyun. Behind him came a woman with shorter hair and a kind face. She smiled at the room, but Veltar noticed that her smile did not reach her eyes. She also stood where she could see all the exits. This was Ambassador Hee-jin. The third human was younger than the others. He had nervous energy and kept touching something on his belt. His eyes were sharp and quick, missing nothing. This was TAC Officer Jun-ho. The Thraxians at the bar started laughing louder when they saw the humans. One of them, a big warrior named Gorvak, stood up and walked toward the 3 newcomers. His 4 arms were thick with muscle, and his red skin was covered in ritual scars that showed how many enemies he had killed. "Look what we have here," Gorvak said in a voice like grinding stone. "The famous humans. You are smaller than I thought." Captain Do-hyun looked at the big alien calmly. "We are just here for drinks. No trouble." "Trouble?" Gorvak laughed and his friends joined in. "You think you could give me trouble, little human?" The room was very quiet now. Everyone was watching to see what would happen. Some aliens were hoping for a fight. Others were reaching for their weapons just in case. Ambassador Hee-jin stepped forward with her diplomat smile. "Perhaps we could all have a peaceful evening. We would be happy to buy you and your friends a drink." "I don't want your drinks," Gorvak said. He moved closer to the humans. "I want to see if you bleed the same color as real warriors." That was when Veltar stood up. The old commander was bigger than most Velkari, and his shell was dark with age and battle damage. When he moved, his broken antenna twitched and the scars on his carapace caught the dim light. Every alien in the room knew who he was. They knew he had fought in more wars than most of them had years of life. "Gorvak," Veltar said quietly. His voice was like metal scraping against stone. "Sit down." The young Thraxian turned around, surprised. "Commander Veltar, this is not your fight." "You are right," Veltar said as he walked closer. "It is not a fight at all. You are children playing with fire you do not understand." Gorvak's red skin got brighter with anger. "Children? I have killed 50 enemies in honorable combat." 50, Veltar repeated. He looked at the humans, then back at Gorvak. "How many humans have you killed?" "None yet, but good," Veltar cut him off. "That means you might live through this war." The cantina was so quiet that everyone could hear the hum of the air recyclers. Gorvak looked confused. His friends at the bar had stopped laughing. Veltar moved until he was standing between Gorvak and the humans. You know nothing of what you speak, young warrior. You see small beings and think them weak. You see strange weapons and think them primitive. You see their ships and think them easy to destroy. He paused and looked around the room at all the watching faces. I thought the same thing once. I was wrong. Very wrong. Captain Do-hyun spoke for the first time since Gorvak had approached them. Commander Veltar. I know that name. You fought at Seoul Station. Veltar's mandibles clicked softly. It was a sound of old pain. Yes, I was there. Then you know, Ambassador Hyojin said quietly. I know, Veltar agreed. He turned back to Gorvak and the other young aliens. Sit. All of you. Listen. And perhaps you will learn something that might save your lives when the real fighting starts. Gorvak wanted to argue, but something in the old commander's voice made him stop. He looked at his friends, then back at Veltar. Slowly he sat down at a nearby table. The other young aliens did the same. The humans found an empty table and sat down quietly. They ordered drinks from the nervous bartender and waited. Veltar returned to his corner table, but now everyone was looking at him. The old warrior took a long drink of his blue firewater and stared into the glass for a moment. When he looked up, his eyes were full of memories that hurt. You want to know about humans? He asked the room. You want to understand what you will be fighting? He gestured to an empty chair at his table. Then come closer. Let me tell you about Seoul Station. Let me tell you about Harmony Colony. Let me tell you about the Battle of Kepler Nebula. Gorvak and his friends moved their chairs closer. Other aliens in the cantina did the same. Even the humans were listening now, though Captain Do-hyun's face had become very serious when Seoul Station was mentioned. Veltar finished his drink and set the empty glass on the scarred table. Outside the cantina's windows, the stars wheeled slowly past as Nexus Prime continued its endless orbit between the worlds. The first thing you must understand, the old commander began, is that humans do not fight like us. They do not follow our rules. They do not care about honor or glory or who has the biggest weapons. He paused and looked directly at Gorvak. They only care about winning, and they are very, very good at it. Veltar looked around the cantina at all the faces watching him. Young aliens who had never seen real war. Old traders who thought they knew everything about fighting. Even the humans were listening, though Captain Do-hyun's eyes had become dark with old memories. Seoul Station, the commander began, his voice heavy like stone. It was supposed to be easy. A small mining station on the edge of human space. 300 humans with basic weapons against 10,000 of our finest warriors. He picked up his empty glass and turned it in his clawed hands. The blue stains at the bottom caught the dim light. I was younger then. Fleet Admiral Veltar, they called me. I commanded the 3rd Assault Fleet of the Velkari Dominion. We had ships that could crack moons in half. Soldiers who had conquered 12 different species. I thought humans would be just another easy victory. Gorvak leaned forward. What happened? We got there and saw Seoul Station hanging in space like a metal rock. It was not pretty like our cities or strong like our fortresses. It looked like something built by people who only cared if it worked, not if it impressed anyone. Veltar gestured with one clawed hand. The station was built around an asteroid. The humans had dug deep into the rock, mining valuable metals. There were tunnels everywhere like an insect nest. We thought this would make it easier to take. We were wrong. The old commander paused to order another drink. The blue liquid arrived quickly and he took a sip before continuing. The station commander was a human named Lieutenant Colonel Ki-woo. He had been a soldier for 20 years. His second in command was Engineer Yuna, a small woman who knew every pipe and wire in that place. They had maybe 50 real soldiers. The rest were miners, technicians, and their families. Families? Asked one of the Zenthari from the back corner. Human young ones and their caregivers, Veltar explained. Humans do not separate their warriors from their breeders the way we do. They live together, work together, fight together. He took another drink and continued. We sent them a message. Surrender or die. Simple choice. What did they say? Gorvak asked. Ki-woo sent back a message with just 2 human words. Do-hyun, what do those words mean in our language? Captain Do-hyun looked up from his own drink. His voice was quiet. Try us, Veltar repeated. 2 words that should have warned me about what was coming. The aliens around the table exchanged looks. 2 words did not seem like much of a threat. We attacked with 1,000 fighters first, fast ships to test their defenses. Seoul Station had only 6 defensive guns. old models that should have been scrapped years ago. Our pilots laughed as they flew in. Veltar's mandibles clicked in a way that showed old pain. Those 6 guns destroyed 300 of our fighters in the first attack wave. How? Asked a young Thraxian. Engineer Yuna had changed them. Instead of firing energy beams, they shot pieces of metal at very high speed. Simple physics, but deadly. Our pilots expected laser fire they could dodge. Instead, they flew into clouds of metal fragments that tore their ships apart. The commander paused and looked around the room. That was my first lesson about humans. They do not try to build better weapons. They make simple weapons work better. But you still had 9,000 warriors left, Gorvak pointed out. Yes. We boarded the station with dropships, Velkari assault troops in full armor, carrying the best weapons in the galaxy. We cut through the outer hull like it was paper and poured into their tunnels. Veltar's voice became quieter. Kiwu was waiting for us. The human commander had turned Sol Station into a trap. The tunnels that we thought would make it easy to take became a maze of death. Engineer Yuna had spent weeks preparing surprises for us. He counted on his clawed fingers. Ore processors that could melt Velkari armor in seconds. Air vents that sprayed superheated gas. Water pipes that carried acid instead of water. Mining charges hidden in the walls controlled by simple switches. But your soldiers had armor, said one of the Velkari traders. Our armor was designed to stop energy weapons and projectiles. It was not designed to stop molten metal or acid gas. Yuna used the station's own systems against us. Every machine became a weapon. Every room became a trap. Veltar drank again and his voice became even quieter. But the worst part was how they used the tunnels themselves. What do you mean? Asked the Zenthari. Humans are smaller than us, but they can move through tight spaces we cannot fit in. Kiwu had his people seal themselves into secure areas and flood other areas with poison gas. They would attack from hidden passages, kill some of our warriors, then disappear again. The commander looked directly at Gorvak. We could not fight an enemy we could not see. We could not chase them through tunnels too small for our bodies. Every step forward cost us soldiers. Every room we took was already empty. How long did it take? Gorvak asked. 6 hours to reach the center of the station. 6 hours to lose 4,000 warriors. When we finally broke into the command center, we found Kiwu waiting for us. Veltar's voice became very quiet. He was alone, standing in front of the reactor controls. In his hand was a device that Engineer Yuna had built. A detonator. The cantina was completely silent now. Even the background noise of the air system seemed to fade away. Kiwu looked at me and my remaining warriors. Then he smiled. Humans have a strange way of smiling when they are about to die. It does not look happy. It looks like they are sharing a secret joke. What did he say? Asked Captain Dohyun. He said, Admiral, you can take this station, but you cannot have it. Then he showed us what Yuna had done to the reactor. Veltar set down his glass with a soft click. She had wired it to explode. Not just a small explosion, a big one. Big enough to destroy Sol Station and any ships within 10 kilometers. He was bluffing, said Gorvak. Was he? Veltar asked. I had 4,000 dead warriors behind me. I had seen what these humans could do with mining equipment and water pipes. Did I want to test whether they would destroy themselves to kill us? He looked around the table. I ordered my remaining forces to retreat. We left Sol Station and pulled our ships back to safe distance. But you could have called his bluff, Gorvak insisted. 3 hours later, Sol Station exploded. Kiwu had set a timer. The silence in the cantina was complete now. Several aliens shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. The explosion destroyed the station, the asteroid it was built on, and 2 of our ships that were too close, Veltar continued. Kiwu, Yuna, and all 300 humans died, but they took 4,000 of our warriors with them. Ambassador Heejin spoke quietly. Kiwu's daughter was 7 years old. She was in the station school when the fighting started. Veltar nodded slowly. The humans did not just defend a military target. They defended their home, their families. That is why they fought so hard. That is why they were willing to die. He finished his drink and gestured for another. After Sol Station, I thought I understood humans. I thought they were just very good at dying. I was wrong again. Wrong how? Asked the Zenthari. They are not just good at dying, Veltar said. They are good at making other people die. Sol Station was just the beginning. Wait until I tell you about Harmony Colony and what 2 humans did to 50,000 Kraxan warriors. Captain Dohyun looked up. Taeho and Yunji. You know them? Veltar asked. Taeho taught me reconnaissance. Hyunji taught me to shoot. Do-hyun's voice was soft with respect. They saved a lot of lives. Yes, Veltar agreed. They saved human lives. They cost us everything else. The old commander looked around the cantina one more time. Outside the windows, the stars continued their slow dance across the dark sky. But that is a story for another drink. The bartender brought Veltar another glass of blue firewater. The old commander held it up to the dim light and watched the liquid swirl like tiny storms. Around his table, aliens sat in complete silence, waiting for him to continue his stories. Harmony Colony, Veltar said finally. A human farming world where families grew food for other human settlements. Rolling hills covered with strange earth plants. Small towns with simple houses. Children playing in streets made of dirt. He took a sip and his mandibles clicked softly. The Kraxan war chief Brutok thought it would be easy prey. Gorvak leaned forward. The Kraxans are famous warriors. Surely they could handle farmers. Brutok commanded 50,000 of their finest fighters, Veltar agreed. Giant warriors with thick armor and weapons that could cut through steel. They had conquered 20 worlds using the same simple plan. Land in large numbers, fight in the open, crush all resistance with pure strength. The commander paused and looked at Captain Do-hyun. How many defenders did Harmony Colony have? 5,000, Do-hyun replied quietly. Mostly civilians with basic training. 5,000 farmers against 50,000 professional warriors, Veltar said to the room. The math seemed simple. Brutok expected to be done in a few days. A young Velkari trader clicked her mandibles with amusement. What went wrong? Sergeant Taeho and Corporal Yunji, Veltar said. Two humans who changed the rules of the war. He set down his glass and used his claws to draw invisible lines on the metal table. Harmony Colony had forests and mountains around the farming areas. Perfect places to hide. Taeho was an expert at moving unseen through wild places. Yunji could kill a target from 2 kilometers away with a single shot. Just 2 soldiers? Asked the Xanthari. Just 2. But they understood something that Brutok did not. They understood that in war, fear can be more powerful than strength. Veltar took another drink and continued. The Kraxans landed on Harmony Colony like thunder from the sky. Huge ships full of warriors ready for glorious battle. Brutok set up his command center on a hill overlooking the main human settlement. He expected the humans to come out and fight, but they didn't? Gorvak asked. The farmers went into the mountains and forests to hide. The small number of real soldiers seemed to disappear into the hills. Brutok was confused but not worried. He sent his warriors to search for the humans. Veltar's voice became quieter. That was when Taeho and Yunji began to hunt. The first Kraxan patrol was found 3 days later. All 12 warriors were dead, killed by single shots from long distance. Their weapons and armor were untouched. Nothing was stolen. The humans had killed them and left them for others to find. He traced more invisible lines on the table. The second patrol disappeared completely. No bodies, no signs of fighting. They just vanished into the forest like they had never existed. The aliens around the table exchanged nervous looks. The idea of warriors simply vanishing was disturbing to all of them. Brutok sent larger groups. 20 warriors, 50 warriors, 100 warriors. It made no difference. Taeho and Yunji picked them off like hunters taking weak animals from a herd. How? Asked a Thraxian. Patience, Captain Do-hyun said from his table. They would watch a patrol for days, learning their habits. Then they would wait until one warrior was separated from the others, even for a moment. Veltar nodded. Yunji could kill a Kraxan from so far away that the others could not tell where the shot came from. By the time they realized their comrade was dead, Taeho and Yunji had already moved to a new position. But surely 50,000 warriors could track down 2 humans, said the Velkari trader. You would think so, Veltar agreed. But these humans knew the land better than the Kraxans. They had spent months before the invasion learning every hill, every forest, every hiding place. They moved like ghosts through country they knew by heart. The commander picked up his glass but did not drink. After 2 weeks, Brutok had lost 500 warriors and had not even seen the enemy. His soldiers were becoming afraid to go on patrol. Some were refusing to leave the main camp. Afraid? Gorvak sounded shocked. Kraxans do not know fear. They learned, Veltar said grimly. Because Taeho and Yunji brought the war to their camp. What do you mean? Supply ships would land at the Kraxan base. When the crews went to unload them, they would find all the guards dead. Killed silently, without any sign of struggle. The supplies were never touched, but the message was clear. Nowhere was safe. Veltar finally took his drink. Command posts would go silent in the middle of the night. When other warriors arrived in the morning, they would find everyone dead at their positions, still sitting at their monitors, still holding their weapons, killed by an enemy they never saw coming. The cantina was very quiet now. Even the background noise seemed muted, as if the station itself was listening to the story. The worst incident happened in the third week, Veltar continued. Brutak's personal transport ship was found with its entire crew dead. 20 elite guards all killed in their sleep, but nothing else was touched. The ship's weapons were still armed. The communications still worked. The humans had walked through Brutak's best security, killed everyone aboard, and left. Why didn't they take the ship? Asked the Zenthari. Because they didn't want the ship, Captain Do-hyun explained. They wanted Brutak to know they could have killed him any time they chose. Veltar nodded. That was the genius of their plan. They were not trying to win by killing all 50,000 Kraxans. They were trying to win by making the Kraxans too afraid to fight. Did it work? Gorvak asked. After a month, Brutak's warriors were jumping at shadows. They refused to patrol alone. They would not go into the forests. Some were even talking about going home. The commander set down his empty glass. Then Taiho and Yunji did something that broke Brutak's spirit completely. He paused for effect, looking around the table at all the waiting faces. They broke into Brutak's personal command ship. Not to kill him or steal anything, just to leave proof that they had been there. What kind of proof? Asked the Velkari trader. They left a human flower on his pillow. A simple white flower that grew in Harmony Colony's fields. On his personal desk, they left a note written in perfect Kraxan language. What did the note say? Gorvak whispered. Captain Do-hyun answered. It said, "A war chief Brutak. Your warriors die because you brought them here to murder our families. Leave now and no more will die. Stay and we will come for you in the dark." Veltar's mandibles clicked with what might have been admiration. 2 humans had walked past all of Brutak's guards, entered his private quarters, and left a message. If they could do that, they could have killed him just as easily. What did Brutak do? Asked the Zenthari. He ordered his entire army to withdraw from Harmony Colony within 3 days. The silence that followed was complete. 50 alien faces stared at Veltar in disbelief. 50,000 warriors, Gorvak said slowly. Defeated by 2 humans. Not defeated, Veltar corrected. Terrorized. Taiho and Yunji never fought a single open battle. They never tried to face the Kraxan army head-on. Instead, they made Brutak's warriors afraid to sleep, afraid to patrol, afraid to be alone even for a moment. But that's not honorable combat, protested one of the Thraxians. Honor. Veltar repeated the word like it tasted bitter. Brutak thought the same thing. He expected humans to fight with honor, following the rules of warfare that all civilized species follow. The commander looked around the table. Humans do not fight for honor. They fight to protect their families. When someone threatens their children, humans will use any method that works. They do not care if it is honorable. They only care if it saves the people they love. Ambassador Hyejin spoke quietly from her table. Taiho had 3 children on Harmony Colony. Kunji had a younger brother who was studying to be a teacher. They were not soldiers seeking glory, Veltar said. They were parents and siblings defending their home. That made them more dangerous than any army. He gestured to the bartender for another drink. Brutak learned what I learned at Seoul Station. When humans have something to protect, they become something different, something that does not follow our rules or fight our way. Is that the end of the story? Asked Gorvak. The end? Veltar laughed, a harsh sound like metal breaking. That was just the beginning. Wait until I tell you about the Battle of Kepler Nebula, where Admiral Da-yoon turned space itself into a weapon. Captain Do-hyun looked up with interest. You were there for that too? I commanded one of the reserve fleets, Veltar admitted. Grand Admiral Thexmore thought overwhelming numbers would finally crush human resistance. 2,000 ships against 100 human vessels. And? Prompted the Zenthari. Da-yoon sank 1,400 of our ships in 6 hours. The humans lost 12. The cantina fell silent again as the aliens tried to imagine such a one-sided battle. But that, Veltar said as his new drink arrived, is a story that will require more alcohol to tell properly. Veltar drank the blue firewater slowly, letting it burn down his throat while he gathered his thoughts. The cantina had become his theater, and every alien in the room was his audience. Even the humans were listening now, their faces serious as they waited for the next tale. The Battle of Kepler Nebula, he began, was supposed to end the war with humans forever. The old commander set down his glass and looked at the scars on his clawed hands. Grand Admiral Thexmore commanded the greatest fleet ever assembled. 12 different alien species working together, 2,000 ships carrying weapons that could destroy planets. That many? Whispered a young Velkari. The combined might of half the galaxy, Veltar confirmed. Thexmore believed that numbers would finally overcome human cleverness. How could 100 human ships stand against 2,000 alien vessels? Gorvak leaned forward eagerly. What was the plan? Simple and direct, Veltar said. Jump into the Kepler Nebula where the human fleet was hiding. Surround them completely. Destroy them all before they could escape or call for help. He paused and looked toward Captain Do Hyun. Tell them about Admiral Da-un. Do Hyun set down his own drink. Admiral Da-un was small even for a human. She had gray hair and wore simple clothes. She looked like someone's grandmother, not a fleet commander. I saw her once through a view screen, Veltar added. Before the battle started, she sent a message to all our ships. She looked tired, like someone who had not slept in many days. What did she say? Asked the Zinthari. She offered us one chance to leave peacefully, Veltar replied. Said that the nebula was dangerous and we should go home to our families. Several aliens around the table made sounds of amusement. The idea of 100 human ships warning away 2,000 alien vessels seemed ridiculous. Thexmore laughed when he heard the message. Veltar continued. He sent back a reply demanding immediate surrender. Dayun's response was just 2 words. The same words Kiwoo had used at Seoul Station. Try us, said Captain Do Hyun quietly. Try us, Veltar repeated. I should have remembered Seoul Station when I heard those words. I should have warned Thexmore. But I was young and eager for glory. The commander picked up his glass again but did not drink. Dayun had 2 special advisors with her. Captain Wanshik, who understood space combat better than any alien admiral, and navigator so young who could calculate hyperspace jumps in her head. 3 humans against 2,000 ships, said Gorvak. Even clever humans could not win such a fight. That is what we all thought, Veltar agreed. The Kepler Nebula is a cloud of gas and dust left over from an old star explosion. It makes sensors work badly and communications difficult. We thought it would help us hide our approach. He finally took his drink. We were wrong. Dayun and her advisors had been studying the nebula for months. They knew things about it that we did not. What kind of things? Asked a Velkari trader. Wanshik discovered that the gas clouds had special properties, electric and magnetic fields that could be changed if you knew how. So Young calculated exactly where ships needed to be positioned to create the effect they wanted. Veltar set down his glass and used his claws to draw invisible shapes on the metal table. When we jumped into the nebula, our fleet spread out in a perfect attack formation. 2,000 ships in a sphere around the human position. No escape routes. Complete victory assured, but, prompted the Zinthari, Da-un was waiting for us. Her 100 ships were positioned at very specific points throughout the nebula, not for defense. For something else entirely. The commander's voice became quieter. At exactly the right moment, all 100 human ships fired at the same time. Not at our vessels, at empty space. Empty space? Gorvak sounded confused. They shot special charges into the gas clouds around them. Charges designed by Wanshik to create explosions at precise locations. So Young had calculated exactly where each explosion needed to happen. Veltar paused, remembering. What happened next was like watching gods reshape the universe. The explosions created a chain reaction in the nebula gas. Gravity waves and electromagnetic pulses spread outward like ripples in water. The fabric of space itself began to twist and bend. Several aliens shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. The idea of space being twisted like cloth was disturbing to think about. Artificial gravity wells formed throughout the nebula. Dozens of them, appearing and disappearing in patterns that So Young had calculated months before. Our perfectly organized fleet was scattered like seeds in a storm. Scattered how? Asked the Velkari trader. Ships that had been next to each other were suddenly hundreds of kilometers apart. Entire squadrons were pulled into different areas of the nebula by gravity fields that should not have existed. Our communications failed as electromagnetic interference blocked all signals. Veltar's voice became even quieter. In less than an hour, our organized fleet of 2,000 ships became 2,000 separate, confused, frightened vessels with no way to talk to each other. But you still outnumbered the humans 20-1, Gorvak pointed out. Numbers mean nothing when you cannot coordinate, Veltar replied. Daun had broken our fleet into small groups scattered across 50 light-years of space. Then her ships began hunting us. Hunting? Human ships would appear out of the gas clouds, attack our isolated vessels, then disappear again before help could arrive. They moved through the nebula like they owned it, striking wherever we were weakest. The commander traced more lines on the table. Our ships were designed for large fleet battles, not individual combat. The humans had smaller, faster vessels that could hide in the gas clouds and strike without warning. How long did the battle last? Asked the Zenthari. 6 hours, Veltar said simply. In 6 hours we lost 1,400 ships. 1,400 vessels carrying the best warriors from 12 different species. The silence in the cantina was complete now. Even the air recycling system seemed to have stopped humming. The humans lost 12 ships, Veltar continued. 12 out of 100, and most of those were damaged, not destroyed. How? Gorvak's voice was barely a whisper. Superior planning. Better understanding of physics. Perfect coordination between Daun, Wanshik, and So-Young. The commander looked around the table. And something else. Something that took me years to understand. What? Asked Captain Do-hyun. Trust, Veltar said. Complete trust between the three commanders. Daun trusted Wanshik's tactical knowledge without question. Wanshik trusted So-Young's calculations completely. So-Young trusted Daun's leadership absolutely. He picked up his glass again. In our cultures, commanders compete with each other. They argue about plans and fight for glory. But these three humans work together like parts of the same machine. What happened to Grand Admiral Thexmore? Asked the Velkari trader. His flagship was one of the first ships destroyed. He died still trying to understand how 100 human vessels had defeated the greatest fleet in galactic history. Veltar drank and set down his empty glass. After Kepler Nebula, I was given command of the remaining ships. My first order was to retreat to safe space and request peace negotiations. You gave up? Gorvak sounded shocked. I gave up the idea that humans could be defeated by conventional warfare, Veltar corrected. 3 humans had just proven that superior numbers and better weapons meant nothing against superior intelligence and planning. The commander looked around the cantina at all the watching faces. That was when I began to truly understand what we were fighting. Not just another alien species. Something new. Something that thought differently than all the rest of us. Different how? Asked the Zenthari. Most species fight the way their instincts tell them to fight. Kraxans charge straight ahead because that is their nature. Velkari use technology because we trust machines more than intuition. Thraxians rely on strength because they are naturally strong. Veltar gestured toward the humans at their table. Humans ignore their instincts. They study their enemies and adapt to fight in whatever way will work best. They do not care about tradition or honor or what is natural for their species. They only care about winning, said Ambassador Hyjin quietly. Yes, Veltar agreed, but not winning for glory or conquest, winning to protect what they love. He signaled the bartender for another drink. After Kepler Nebula, the war changed completely. Other species began to surrender rather than face human fleets. The galaxy learned to respect and fear these small, clever beings who could turn space itself into a weapon. Is that the end? Asked Gorvak. The end of the war, yes, Veltar said. But not the end of the lessons I learned about humans. His new drink arrived and he raised the glass toward Captain Do-hyun. Some lessons are more important than others. Some teach you not just how humans fight, but why they fight. And why is that? Asked the Zenthari. Veltar looked around the cantina one more time, meeting the eyes of every alien who had listened to his stories. Because they understand something that the rest of us are only beginning to learn. War is not about proving who is strongest. War is about protecting what matters most. He took a sip of his drink and smiled, a strange expression on his scarred face. The most important lesson comes next. The lesson about what humans do when the fighting stops. Veltar held his glass of blue firewater up to the dim light and watched the liquid catch the glow from the cantina's overhead lamps. Around him, the room was completely silent. Aliens who had come here to drink and trade now sat like students in a classroom, waiting for the old commander's final lesson. The war ended 3 months after Kepler Nebula, he began. Species after species surrendered rather than face human fleets. The mighty Kraxan Empire offered peace terms. The proud Thraxian Confederation asked for mercy. Even my own Velkari Dominion admitted defeat. He set down his glass without drinking. I expected the humans to demand tribute. Conquered territory. Slaves to work their mines and build their cities. That is what any other species would have demanded after such victories. What did they ask for instead? Whispered Gorvak. Nothing, Veltar said simply. The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Aliens around the table exchanged confused looks. Nothing made no sense after such a complete victory. Nothing? Asked the Xanthari. No territory? No tribute? No punishment for the attacks on their worlds? They asked for one thing, Veltar corrected. A promise that we would never attack their civilians again. No wars against human farmers or miners or families. Only military targets if fighting ever started again. The old commander picked up his glass but still did not drink. That was when I knew I had been wrong about humans from the very beginning. Wrong how? Asked a Velkari trader. I thought they fought for conquest like the rest of us. I thought they wanted to rule the galaxy and make other species serve them. But humans fight for only one reason. He paused and looked around the room at all the waiting faces, to be left alone. The silence that followed was different from before, thoughtful instead of shocked. The aliens were beginning to understand something important. Humans do not want to conquer other worlds, Veltar continued. They want to build families and grow food and make things with their hands. They only become dangerous when someone threatens to take those simple pleasures away from them. Captain Do-hyun spoke from his table across the room. The Galactic Council offered us membership 6 months after the war ended. And? Prompted Gorvak. We said yes, but only if we could help write new rules for how wars are fought. No more attacks on civilian populations. No more targeting of families and children. Ambassador Hyejin added. We also offered to share our technology with former enemies. Medical advances, farming techniques, manufacturing processes. Things that could help everyone live better lives. Veltar nodded slowly. That was the biggest surprise of all. Instead of keeping their weapons secret, humans began teaching other species how to defend themselves better. Why would they do that? Asked the Xanthari. Because humans understand something that the rest of us are still learning, Veltar explained. A galaxy where everyone is safe is a galaxy where humans can be safe too. The commander finally took a sip of his drink. I was invited to Earth 2 years after the war ended, to help design new training programs for mixed-species military units. What was Earth like? Asked a young Thraxian. Disappointing, Veltar said with a click of amusement. I expected a fortress world. Military bases everywhere, weapons pointed at the sky. Instead, I found farmers and teachers and children playing in gardens. He gestured toward Captain Do-hyun. Do-hyun was my escort on that visit. He showed me human cities where aliens and humans worked together. Shops where Velkari merchants sold goods to Thraxian customers. Schools where human children learned alongside young Kraxans. The humans had no fear? Asked Gorvak. They had caution, Do-hyun replied. But they also had hope. Hope that former enemies could become friends if given the chance. Veltar set down his glass and looked directly at Gorvak. That brings me to why I stopped you from threatening these humans tonight. The young Thraxian shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I was just having fun. No, Veltar said firmly. You were making the same mistake I made 40 years ago. You were seeing small beings and thinking them weak. You were seeing peaceful behavior and thinking it meant they could not fight. The commander stood up slowly, his scarred carapace catching the light. Humans are not weak. They are careful. They do not start fights because they know how terrible fighting can become. But when someone forces them to fight, he let the words hang in the air. When someone forces them to fight, they become something that even veteran warriors fear. Gorvak looked down at his hands. I understand now. Do you? Veltar asked. Do you understand that Captain Do-hyun could probably kill everyone in this cantina with his bare hands if he chose to? Do you understand that Ambassador Hyejin carries enough diplomatic immunity to have your entire fleet impounded if you threaten her? Do you understand that young TAC Officer Junho has been calculating exit routes and weapon positions since the moment they walked in here? The 3 humans at their table said nothing, but their silence was more convincing than any boast could have been. How do you know all this? Asked the Xanthari. Because I have worked with humans for 20 years, Veltar replied. I have trained alongside their soldiers. I have planned strategies with their admirals. I have learned to recognize the signs of their readiness. He gestured toward the human table. Look at them carefully. Really look. The aliens in the cantina turned to stare at the three humans. Do-hyun sat relaxed but alert, his hands resting where he could reach his weapons quickly. Hee-jin smiled pleasantly while keeping track of every alien in the room. Junho appeared nervous, but his eyes missed nothing. They came here for peaceful business, Veltar continued. But they are prepared for war if peace fails. That is the human way. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. What should we do? Asked Gorvak quietly. Learn, Veltar said simply. Learn from species that have found better ways to live. Learn from humans who turned enemies into allies through strength and mercy. The commander walked slowly toward the human table. Do-hyun looked up as he approached. Captain, Veltar said formally, I believe you had business to discuss with representatives of various alien species. Do-hyun smiled and gestured to an empty chair. Commander Veltar, we had hoped you would consider our proposal for joint training exercises. Joint training? Gorvak called from across the room. Teaching mixed crews how to work together, Ambassador Hyejin explained. Human and alien officers serving on the same ships, learning each other's strengths and covering each other's weaknesses. TAC Officer Junho added, The galaxy faces new threats now, pirates who attack ships from all species, rogue asteroids that threaten inhabited worlds, problems that are too big for any one species to handle alone. Veltar sat down at the human table. And you believe cooperation is better than competition? We believe survival is better than pride, Do-hyun replied. The techniques that won our war can be used to protect peace. What would you teach us? Asked the Zenthari from across the room. Adaptability, said Ambassador Hee-jin. How to change tactics when situations change. How to work together even when you disagree about methods. Planning, added Junho. How to think 5 steps ahead of your problems. How to turn weaknesses into strengths. Trust, finished Do-hyun. How to rely on people who are different from you. How to build teams that are stronger than the sum of their parts. Veltar looked around the cantina at all the alien faces watching this conversation. Young warriors eager for glory, old traders worried about profits, diplomats thinking about politics. These humans defeated the combined fleets of 12 species, he told the room. Now they offer to teach us their methods. Not to conquer us, but to help us protect ourselves. What do you think, Commander? Asked Gorvak. Veltar turned back to Captain Do-hyun. I think the galaxy learned an important lesson about underestimating humans. Perhaps it is time we learned some positive lessons as well. Do-hyun extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. We would be honored to work with you, Commander. Veltar reached out with his own clawed hand and grasped the human's smaller fingers. The handshake was awkward but genuine. The honor is mine, Captain. After 40 years of studying humans in war, I look forward to learning about humans in peace. Around the cantina, other aliens began moving toward the human table. Not threatening this time, but curious. Asking questions about the training programs. Discussing possibilities for cooperation. Veltar leaned back in his chair and watched the conversations begin. Outside the windows, stars wheeled slowly past as Nexus Prime continued its orbit between the worlds. But inside the cantina, something new was beginning. Something that might have been hope. He picked up his glass of blue fire water and raised it in a toast toward the ceiling. To lessons learned, he said quietly, and to teachers wise enough to share them. The old commander drank deeply and smiled. For the first time in 40 years, the taste was not bitter. It was sweet with possibility.